By late 1944, the Second World War had entered its bloodiest winter. The Allies had pushed from Normandy across France, and many believed the war was almost over. But in the frozen Ardennes, Hitler prepared one last strike. Over 200,000 German soldiers and more than 1,000 tanks waited hidden beneath the snow. Their goal was to split the Allied front, capture Antwerp, and force a negotiated peace. The attack began on December 16, 1944, and history would call it the Battle of the Bulge. It was the largest battle fought by American troops in Europe. Private First Class Raymond Charles Thompson of the 702nd Tank Destroyer Battalion sat inside an M10 Wolverine north of Neuville, Belgium. The trees outside stood thin and white, and the wind cut through steel and skin alike. Through his periscope, Thompson watched the valley. He saw a line of tanks moving through the forest. 12 vehicles, maybe more. Panzer IV's half-tracks, fuel trucks, and a Tiger at the front. They were moving toward a road that led straight to Bastogne, where the 101st Airborne Division was trapped without supplies. If the Germans reached that road, the defense would collapse. Thompson had no order to fire. His radio was weak and filled with static. 3 days earlier, his commander, Captain Langston, had warned every crew not to shoot without confirmation. The fog, confusion, and broken lines made friendly fire a constant danger. They were told to observe, report, and wait. Thompson obeyed those rules for 3 days, watching enemy armor pass through the trees, unable to act. But now, as the column crawled closer to the crossroads, waiting no longer felt safe. It felt suicidal. Ray Thompson had not been born a soldier. He grew up in Kansas, surrounded by wheat fields and wind. His father repaired engines, and his mother taught mathematics. From them, he learned how the world worked through numbers and angles. He joined the army to study engineering, but instead found himself in Normandy. He fought through hedgerows so thick that the enemy could be 10 feet away unseen. He saw friends die in fire and mud. He learned that survival came not from luck but precision. He began keeping a notebook filled with sketches of German tanks and calculations of range and angle. He became known as the Quiet Clock because he spoke rarely and always with purpose. When he fired, he hit what he aimed for. That December morning, the cold bit through his gloves as he watched the column advance. He counted every vehicle, every movement. He saw the Tiger lead, followed by the Panzers, the half-tracks, and the fuel trucks at the back. The road was narrow and hemmed in by trees. It was the perfect choke point. The pattern was clear to him. If he struck the right targets, the entire formation would collapse. Thompson breathed slowly and adjusted the elevation. His loader Jenkins hesitated and said they had no clearance. Thompson answered that he knew. Then he fired. The shell left the barrel with a deafening roar and hit the third tank. The Panzer exploded in a bright flash that tore through the snow and smoke. Before the sound faded, Thompson ordered another round loaded. He moved the Wolverine a few yards left and fired again, hitting the 6th vehicle, a half-track filled with infantry. The blast turned the road into chaos. Soldiers screamed and ran. Fire spread across the trees. The Tiger tried to reverse, but the path was blocked. The column was trapped between burning wrecks. Thompson reloaded and aimed for the 8th vehicle, the fuel truck. The explosion was massive. Flames shot high into the trees, and the shock wave shook the ground. Within minutes, the German formation was burning from the center outward. Thompson's method was not random. He had studied how German convoys moved and how their formations relied on tight order. By hitting the 3rd, 6th, and 8th vehicles, he created total paralysis. He called the idea controlled collapse. The Germans fired blindly into the woods, convinced they were under attack by an entire American battery. But there was only one Wolverine shifting position after each shot to confuse them. Every new flash came from a different angle. The Germans shouted conflicting directions and fired into empty trees. The Tiger finally turned its turret toward Thompson's ridge. He waited. He knew the armor on the sides was weaker. When the tank turned far enough to expose its flank, he fired again. The shell struck true. For a moment nothing happened, then the Tiger's ammunition cooked off. The turret blew clear from the hull and landed several yards away. The fireball silenced the last German gun. After half an hour the forest was quiet again, except for the crackle of flames. 7 vehicles were destroyed and 4 more disabled. The road to Noville was blocked with wreckage. Thompson sat still inside the tank staring through the periscope at the burning trees. His loader asked if they were going to be court-martialed. Thompson gave no answer. When American infantry reached the site later, they were stunned. The scene looked like the aftermath of a heavy air strike. But there were no craters, no sign of artillery. Just one set of Wolverine tracks. German prisoners taken later gave confused stories. Some said they had been attacked by 6 guns, others claimed it was paratroopers with bazookas. One said the forest itself opened fire. They called it the Ghost Battery. At headquarters, Captain Langston read Thompson's report. It was neat and detailed with sketches and distance calculations. Langston said no one had authorized the engagement. Thompson simply replied that he knew what he saw. Langston warned that one mistake could have killed Americans. Thompson nodded. Langston sighed and said he would send the report to Division Command. The investigation that followed found no clear violation. The radios had been jammed. No direct orders were received or ignored. What they could confirm was that the action saved the Noville Road and allowed supplies to reach Bastogne. The official record called it an unsanctioned but tactically justified engagement. Weeks later, Thompson was reassigned to training duty. He explained his logic and drew diagrams showing how to disable convoys by targeting key vehicles instead of firing randomly. His notes were sent to Fort Sill, Oklahoma. The concept became known as asymmetrical engagement sequencing. It taught gunners to use precision and order instead of brute force. Langston visited him once after the reassignment. He said he had read the line in Thompson's notebook about controlled collapse and asked what it meant. Thompson told him, "When you pull one stone from a wall, the rest falls, if you know which one to pull." Langston smiled and said next time to give him a little warning. Thompson nodded. To him, it had never been about glory, only about necessity. After the war, Ray Thompson returned home to Kansas. He married a woman named Helen and opened a repair shop near Dodge City. He built silos, fixed tractors, and taught his son geometry by drawing in the dirt. He never called himself a hero and rarely spoke of the Ardennes. Decades later, a historian found Captain Langston's report buried in old Army files. He traced Thompson, now an old man living quietly with his wife and a cat named Murphy. When the historian asked about that day, Thompson thought for a long time before speaking. He said he remembered the trees and how still everything was before the first shot, like the world was holding its breath. When asked why he didn't wait for orders, he said because by the time the radio worked it would have been too late. He paused and added that he didn't break the rules, he just stepped past them long enough to do what had to be done. Ray Thompson died in 2008. His name was never listed among the decorated heroes of the Battle of the Bulge. But inside modern Army manuals, a case study remains known as Engagement 27B Noville Sector. It describes an unidentified tank destroyer crew that halted a German column through selective targeting. The name is not given, but the lesson endures. One colonel who studied it years later said he didn't disobey orders, he operated beyond them. Today the Ardennes are quiet again. The Seine forest road lies under moss and snow. Tourists pass where tanks once burned. No monument marks the spot where a farm boy from Kansas stopped a column of German armor. Yet his idea lives on. Courage does not always shout. Sometimes it calculates, and sometimes it acts when orders fall silent.